Hi, Roberta. It looks like everything has been promoted on my side, so I'm looking good here. Thanks.
You're welcome, Peter. Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Mark.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got here 2 minutes early.
We are too.
Let me knock off my audio. We still on?
Hi, Board Member Walsh. We are checking to see if Board Members Watts and Grable are still available. And so we'll see if we can at least get one more to join so we have a quorum and can run this subcommittee meeting. So
Perfect. Perfect. I appreciate it. I'm loving the materials too, by the way. That's quite all right. I spaced it out last time, so
We're checking. Just give
sometimes
us another moment. Oh, there's,
sometimes. Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry, guys. I had a hard time getting on my Zoom. I apologize. So I did get a text message from Board Member Grable that he's going to be a little bit late. But with myself and Board Member Walsh, we do have a quorum, so I think we should go ahead and get started. Let me pull up. Okay, great. So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 11:03. Secretary Atha, if we could have a roll call.
Chair Watts,
Here.
Board Member Grable, Board Member Walsh.
Here.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder to all the members to please mute your phones and microphones when you're not speaking. So we will open it up to public comment. So we're taking public comments on item 2. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Atha, do we have any live or email or voicemail public comments at this time?
We have no public comments.
Great, thank you. So we are now taking comments on the previous minutes. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Atha, do we have any live email or voicemail public comments for the minutes?
We have no public comments.
Great, so we will accept the minutes as is unless there is any changes. All right, so we will get started. We will move to item 4.1. Director Burke, if you could introduce this item.
thank you, Chair Watts and members of the committee. We appreciate you all making time to get together today for this subcommittee meeting. I think everyone is very aware that we have been dealing with some successive dry years and are concerned about drought conditions. We've been doing a lot of work and outreach to get information out to our community and working closely with Sonoma Water and the other contractors as we're preparing to get through this year and also prepare for future years. And so the item today specifically is a request for a recommendation to the Board of Public Utilities and subsequent City Council regarding a resolution requesting a community-wide 20% voluntary reduction in water use. And Deputy Director Water Resources Peter Martin will be leading us off on this item.
Thank you, Director Burke, and good morning, Chair Watts and members of the committee. I'm going to try to bring up my screen here real quick, so just give me a moment. Should be able to see it now, right? Okay, looking good. All right. So lots to discuss today. It's been very busy for staff. We've been kind of just taking in information from a fire hose on sort of watershed conditions and water supply conditions and trying to come up with game plan. And we've been planning for this for quite a while. So today I'll just be sharing a lot of the latest information and how we're going to proceed with pursuing a voluntary water conservation request on a community-wide basis. So this slide right here is just sort of a kind of where we're at with regards to rainfall totals this year. It's been very dry again. We're in a kind of a second successive year of critically dry weather. At this time last year, rainfall, interestingly, was higher in Santa Rosa than it was in Ukiah. We must have had a couple storms that just sort of pointed, I guess, the fire hose towards Santa Rosa and missed the upper watershed. But as you can see, when you're really comparing the two, where we're at this year is not that different from where we were last year. And that was the third driest year on record in 127 years of record keeping in the upper watershed. So yeah, this is just a a very dry period in our water history. And we're hearing a lot about how Sonoma Water is responding to that and continuing to move forward throughout the remainder of the water year. So this graphic I don't typically show to the BPU, but I thought it was timely right now, given kind of some of the things that are going on in the upper watershed. Storage in Lake Pillsbury is currently just below 40,000 acre feet, or under 50% of their targeted water supply for this time of year. PG&E has been managing their water supply throughout the year and had requested a variance for some of their flows out of Lake Pillsbury earlier in the year, as you all remember, which is not uncommon during dry years. But this is very much well below their historical lows for the operation of Lake Pillsbury. And so they've been making pretty minimal releases into the East Fork of the Russian River as a result, which obviously has some impacts on Lake Mendocino downstream as well. I did find out that this month, the Potter Valley Irrigation District was notified by PG&E that they will see more than 50% reduction in their contracted amount that they get typically in any given year. So the impacts are definitely being felt throughout all parts of the Russian River and Eel River watersheds. And so just definitely kind of not a lot of great news to share out there. So Lake Mendocino is currently at about 36,000 acre feet of storage, and reservoir outflows have been kind of bouncing around 25 to 30 CFS per their requirements under the temporary change order that they filed back in February. We did hear yesterday at the Water Advisory Committee that they've been having to make routine adjustment to flows to make sure that they're continuing to ensure compliance with that temporary change order. And then we were also kind of reminded that the order expires at the end of July for that flow regime that they have under the temporary change order. And that we were notified too by staff of Sonoma Water that if that's not extended and there are not substantial reductions in diversions by the folks in the upper watershed, they could see significant impacts to Lake Mendocino by the end of October. Yesterday, kind of Sonoma Water staff really just sort of emphasized the critical nature of the situation in the upper Russian River. Just to remind everyone that Sonoma Water doesn't necessarily have control over a lot of the folks that divert water in the upper Russian River. And they're working pretty closely with those folks in the upper watershed right now to talk about various agreements that could be made to kind of reduce overall diversions upstream. So current storage in Lake Sonoma is about 149,000 acre feet, or about 61% of their target water supply curve for this time of year. Outflow today was about 100 CFS. The typical flows for the dry time of year or dry situation under Decision 1610 is a 75 CFS requirement, but they've been trying to adhere to that as much as possible. So this was a pretty interesting event for us in this month. Governor Newsom stood in Lake Mendocino and kind of the dry lake bed under what I've told is typically about 40 feet underwater, and made a declaration of a drought emergency, or proclamation, excuse me, of a drought emergency in Sonoma and Mendocino counties. And he really kind of hit the fact that this new normal with climate change just really gives urgency to continuing to build drought resilience, not only in this region, but across the state. And there's a good, all likelihood that we'll see continued prolonged droughts occurring in the future. He did talk a little bit about some of the successes that Sonoma Water's had through the forecast informed reservoir operations and how they've been able to manage that as an example, but just to kind of acknowledge that that's always not always enough. But this proclamation essentially requests coordination for additional state resources to various departments that could help the region, including Department of Agriculture, State Water Resources Control Board, Department of Water Resources as well. And it really prioritizes and streamlines those services and state assistance to this affected area. Following on that, the County of Sonoma made a drought emergency proclamation. The Board of Supervisors were quoted as saying, "There is no water to waste at this time," and that immediate water savings are needed from all members of our community, including urban and commercial and industrial and agricultural sectors. The emergency proclamation does have a little bit of something to it in that it requests the state kind of proclaim a disaster and seek a state and federal disaster relief especially for the agricultural customers that are being affected throughout the county. And just want to note that it does cover the entire area of Sonoma County, including all the cities and special districts. So should disaster assistance become available, the cities and others would also be covered under that, whatever that would look like as well, through those coordination agreements. So just kind of wanted to bring this all together here with this slide. It is the second consecutive critically dry year. As I mentioned, Sonoma Water's regional storage is at historical lows for this time of year. Throughout its entire operation, they've never sort of seen this scenario. So at this point, Sonoma Water has done everything they can to sort of actively manage and preserve storage in Lake Mendocino. They filed a temporary change petition back in February, which was granted, and they were able to sort of actively manage their storage a little better in Lake Mendocino. But Sonoma Water, they will be filing another temporary change petition with the state next week, very likely, asking for reduced releases from Lake Sonoma into the lower Russian River. So expanding sort of their previous request as well in Lake Mendocino. So continuing to allow them to operate under their critically dry scenarios under Decision 1610 for the upper watershed, as well as expanding that down to the lower watershed. That compliance is likely going to be based on a 5-day average as far as the request for Sonoma Water, which allows them to provide a little bit of a balance with how they release their flows and manage things for their points of compliance. But that request will also come with a recommendation for a reduction in overall diversions from Sonoma Water, which means that contractors like Santa Rosa Water will need to reduce their water use to meet that compliance metric, if granted, I should say. So yesterday, there was an action-packed Water Advisory Committee meeting. They basically went through a resolution, unanimously approved that resolution, requesting all the members of the Water Advisory Committee basically request their customers do everything they can to save what they've set as a target of 20% over 2020 usage in order to preserve critical supplies in the Russian River watershed. And this request is mostly at this point focused on residents making behavioral changes to meet this 20% target, including things like, being efficient with your landscape irrigation, fixing water leaks in your homes, and then of course, taking advantage of water use efficiency programs. Also of note at the meeting, the Water Advisory Committee revisited the water shortage allocation methodology. The water shortage allocation methodology is in the restructured agreement for water supply for Sonoma Water and its contractors, section 3.5. This water shortage allocation methodology was meant for in situations like this where we're anticipating cutbacks to diversions and deliveries by Sonoma Water. It sort of establishes a priority of customers and allocations. And obviously contractors are subject to liquidated damages and penalties for exceeding those allocations. So of note, the restructured agreement also allows for the Water Advisory Committee to unanimously adopt an alternate method for allocating water should they see it's fit. And then the allocation methodology, just to note, is based on sort of what they call reasonable requirements for contractors. It obviously rewards and encourages water conservation Doesn't penalize those that have been water efficient historically. And then, so therefore it sort of avoids cutbacks based on historic consumption, and then recognizes sort of that demand hardening that comes with investment by contractors in conservation. So as was noted in that previous slide, the Water Advisory Committee does have the ability to propose an alternate allocation methodology. There has been some concerns amongst the sort of different members of the Water Advisory Committee with how the initial methodology worked out with regards to different scenarios. And so therefore, and given that we're in kind of a critical situation right now, what was proposed was an equal reduction percentage across the board for all the contractors for each monthly allocation to all the contractors. This is in order to meet that 20% target for reduced diversions by Sonoma Water. The difference would be that it's not on a month-to-month basis. It's going to be determined as far as performance, as far as how contractors are doing with regards to allocation on the cumulative 4-month deliveries to give some flexibility to contractors to be able to meet that target. And then the liquidated damages as well, if necessary, hopefully not, would be calculated based on that 4-month allocation and not on those individual monthly allocations. So this is obviously sort of a temporary situation right now with the 4 months that's being proposed from July through October, but the TAC will have a subcommittee that will immediately start to work and continue to meet to establish a revised allocation methodology beyond this 4 months. So, we're not going to put this into play and then just kind of walk away. There will be quite a bit of work to make sure that we come back to the table and figure out something that's going to work long term. So I just wanted to take a moment in the next few slides to kind of give you all an update on the fantastic work that the Water Use Efficiency team and the Water Resources Division have been doing in concert with the city's communications team over the last few months, and some of the things that we'll be working on during the short term here to continue to launch into sort of more drought messaging. So a drought webpage is live. This webpage is really intended to be a one-stop shop for information on the drought for all Santa Rosa water customers. The latest information on conditions, and obviously as we move through conservation requests or restrictions, all that information will be there. We're also linking content that will be helpful info and obviously frequently asked questions. We're getting quite a few questions from customers already about how we're going to move forward with this. And then of course, we'll provide plenty of links to tips and water use efficiency programs that can help folks meet the conservation targets as we move through the summer. And of course, we'll have the link to where folks can report water waste under our water waste ordinance. But going forward, you're going to want to direct folks to srcity.org/drought for all information regarding this current drought. I did want to note too that the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership is on the cusp of transitioning to a summer drought campaign. The tagline will be "Drought is here, save water." The artwork being displayed is still sort of in its final draft form, but this is mostly what you're going to see as far as sort of a color scheme and how the messaging will go out. But this will be utilized as sort of a baseline messaging platform that can be utilized by all members of the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership. So for instance, Santa Rosa Water could slide our logo in there and it would look the same as if any other contractor or partnership member would be utilizing it. So this is going to be an aggressive new campaign, obviously with the goal of helping customers achieve that 20% savings that's being requested region-wide. And then of course, it will be multimedia, radio, digital, and print advertising that is planned. Of course, it will be bilingual to reach the broadest audience possible. And you will see this kind of campaign in a very high visibility fashion with signage and advertising throughout Santa Rosa through the remainder of the summer. I did want to highlight some of the Santa Rosa water activities that are starting to kick off right now. We'll likely be bringing back some of the successful drought drive-ups that we had during the last drought throughout the summer. Those will probably be coordinated with the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership and be kind of focused on different areas throughout the county, as well as Mendocino County and probably Marin County all at the same time. So expect more on that throughout the summer as well. Water waste patrols began this month. We're going out early in the morning, trying to find folks that maybe have leaky sprinklers or things running off into the street. And then typically we give them what's called the OOPS tag, which allows us to work through with a customer to sort of educate them and not penalize them for potentially violating the water waste ordinance. But this has actually been very successful in the past. We tend to get quite a bit of response on this, and it'll ramp up throughout the summer. So we have staff starting the patrols very early in the morning and continuing as well throughout the remainder of the summer. And then you'll continue to see increased visibility of the new campaign and resources for our community to achieve savings now. So we'll be bringing forth some very exciting outreach materials and new campaign resources for the community.
Deputy
do have
Director Martin, sorry to interrupt. Board Member Walsh had his hand raised. I don't know if you want to wait to answer questions at the end or if you're willing to take questions.
Actually, yeah, I need a drink of water, so it's probably a good opportunity for a pause.
Great. Board Member Walsh.
Thank you very much, Chair Watts. The Deputy Director Martin, on the OOPS tag, is that where, and this is not for me, it's for a friend, is that where one neighbor would notice another power washing a few, 3 cars, a boat in a driveway, where they would tell the city, hey, there's a water problem there, and then the city would deliver the tag? Or how does that work?
Yeah, typically, in the instance of like our water waste patrols, someone might see some runoff going down the stormwater drain early in the morning for an irrigation issue. And so staff would go out and kind of, slap that OOPS tag on the door. But also in an example like you mentioned, where we're following up on a complaint, that comes in through our water waste complaint protocols, we could also slap that up there. And it just is a way for us to make that contact with the customer and just kind of educate them. It's not meant to be aggressive or punitive. We've found that typically when it comes to water conservation, that type of outreach is the best, and you get the best response. So this is kind of an example. We would probably update this tag, but this is sort of what we have at the moment as far as that OOPS tag.
Great. I appreciate you couching it in the terms of education. And I had heard from a constituent that, gee, look at this video, and, I had to agree. And it was an awful, unfortunate practice. And then I just didn't know, where to refer them. And they didn't want to approach the person because some people think wasting water is a freedom, and others think conserving water is a community goal. So I didn't want to get in all that. I just said if they could, but I didn't know where to refer them for the contact. So
yeah, we do have a water waste complaint form, and you can also refer folks directly to our water use efficiency mailbox as well. Definitely appreciate the fact that you don't want to be confrontational with a neighbor. That's what we're here for, and when we've got plenty of experience on how to sort of respond to these types of situations.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Watts.
Okay, so I'll just jump right in. where we left off, we had a pretty successful Earth Day week. I guess it was more Earth Week rather than Earth Day. But we hosted events both virtually, and then we had a drive-up event as well at a Place to Play park. We hosted it on our Earth Day webpage. Most of the virtual offerings were focused on water smart habits. We really tried to make that the focal point of our Earth Day efforts this year, given where we are with the drought. But there was also, obviously neighborhood creeks cleanup information, and highlighted the creek trail system that we have here at the city of Santa Rosa, as well as a variety of kids activities. And then I did want to point out that as far as our metrics go, we handed out about 300 water smart kits at the April 22nd event in a Place to Play park. Mayor Rogers and Vice Mayor Rogers were both in attendance. They did hand out quite a bit of events and gave out Linda a hand, and it was really nice actually. So a very well attended event. In addition to those water smart kits, we did hand out quite a bit of materials that were eco-friendly materials for kids as well. Given that there's not a lot going on out there in the world, it was very well attended. So and then of course, just our virtual activities hosted on the Earth Day webpage. We saw a lot of hits on the webpage as well. So just a great way to get more information out about the situation we're in with water supply, and it worked out really well. So we've also been really hammering outreach on rebates right now. Some info has gone out in bill inserts, for instance. We're continuing to utilize the City Connections newsletter as a vessel to get more information out to customers about our rebate programs, as well as our social media and other advertisement avenues. Throughout the summer, we'll continue to host public workshops. We've been doing those through Zoom at the moment, and we're still getting quite a bit of attendance. We did a Firewise landscape event not so long ago, or we sponsored that. And those are going to continue to be held throughout the summer to give customers the resources they need to both utilize our rebates to make changes in their landscapes to be more water efficient. Of course, we continue to notify people that there are landscape templates available and other DIY info on the WaterSmart webpage for folks so that they can make those changes in their yard. And then we'll also the script is still being developed right now, but we're working on a radio ad as part of Water Awareness Month that will go out and also kind of direct customers to that rebate, or the rebates available we have. And so finally, I just wanted to close with sort of the action that is being sort of requested of the subcommittee today regarding the proposal that we're going to be going forward to with the BPU and the City Council requesting a community-wide voluntary 20% conservation target. It's aligning ourselves with the action of the WAC yesterday. So just a reminder, yesterday at the Water Advisory Committee, they did adopt a resolution requesting that all the contractors move forward with some action to urge customers to reduce their water use by 20% over 2020 levels. We are aware that many of the contractors have already or will take formal action from their governing bodies to request their customers reduce water use by 20%. So we're all in alignment and moving forward with that as well. So I just kind of wanted to summarize in this graphic here, sort of the recommended approach as to how we're going to move forward throughout the remainder of the summer. At this point, we're requesting a voluntary 20% community-wide conservation request, and that's being asked of all Sonoma water contractors at this time. Santa Rosa water staff, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, are continuing to work with Sonoma Water and the contractors to finalize a water shortage allocation methodology beyond this sort of 4-month window, where we're proposing a across the board equal cutback of all contractors. In the meantime, Sonoma Water will be filing a temporary emergency change petition, likely next week. And the State Water Resources Control Board has some time to respond to that, likely, hopefully very soon. But, my understanding is historically it's taken a month or so for the State Water Board to come back with a formal order and response to that temporary change petition. So that is very likely going to include requirements for reduced diversions and ask of cutbacks of Sonoma Water and their contractors. Right now, the proposal is likely going to be a 20% cutback in reduced diversions by Sonoma Water. So just continuing, the State Water Resource Control Board will respond to that temporary change petition, likely in June or July. And then beyond that, staff will need to prepare for the implementation of our water shortage contingency plan. So once we have a firm number with regards to the expectations as to how much we'll need to cut back and the demand reduction scenarios that play out of that, Santa Rosa Water is going to need to look at implementing one of the stages of our water shortage contingency plan. And so staff will return at that time with the mandatory water use conservation recommendation in June or July to the City Council. Likely be running this up through this same committee and BPU, kind of using a very similar approach as long as we can manage that as far as the timelines. So sort of the next step, it's a progressive voluntary, of course, first, and then moving on to implementation of our water shortage contingency plan. So in summary, today, what we're asking of the Water Conservation Subcommittee is that the subcommittee recommend to the BPU and the City Council that they move forward with a voluntary community-wide implementation of a voluntary 20% conservation request. And then, of course, staff will take the appropriate actions to move forward with the implementation needed to give the community all the tools they need to meet that target as well. With that, I think that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to ask or answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We will take board member questions and comments first. I do see that board member Walsh has his hand raised.
Thank you, Chair Watts, and thank you, Director Burke and Deputy Director Martin for the presentation. It's very thoughtful and lays out what we need to do next. One question was just about my education on this, and I appreciate your patience. We're looking at the water storage in Lake Sonoma. What's the projected use before the next big rains, or before the period where we have more water coming in than going out of Lake Sonoma? What's our projection for the low level given our current conditions?
Well, so, it is a little bit of a different situation with Lake Sonoma than Lake Mendocino. It's very dire as far as Lake Mendocino goes. And ultimately, just want to point out that the contractors really have very little to influence what can be done up in Lake Mendocino. Our water supply mostly comes from Lake Sonoma. But there's a 2 to 3 year supply in Lake Sonoma. And my understanding is that they are not expecting to hit that. I guess I should step back to just a little bit. There is a 100,000 acre foot threshold in decision 1610 that governs the water rights for Sonoma Water. And when they hit that 100,000 acre foot threshold, there is a trigger for a 30% reduction in diversions. So what we heard from Sonoma Water is they are not anticipating hitting that 100,000 acre foot threshold, which is sort of a critical management threshold for them. I've heard they obviously run these scenarios in a variety of different ways, depending upon the expectations of when rain comes, potentially maybe even get a little bit more rain before the end of the season. But I heard a number of around 100 and 10,000 acre feet, but it is quite a range. You know, when they model these things, they use historical data sets, you know, including temperatures and rainfall and demands. But you know, the reduced diversions will obviously help, you know, in some ways. But the most critical piece for Sonoma Water at this point is getting that temporary change petition filed and an order issued, allowing them to better manage their flows and outflows going out of Sonoma, Lake Sonoma right now. That will be where they get their most bang for their buck as far as managing the water supply.
I appreciate that. So there's so many variables going on in front of Lake Sonoma, and then dependencies on the reduced outflows into the river, and the interdependencies between all those variables. So I appreciate that. And now I know why that projection is not on the slide, because it's going to be a changing figure, changing target. And the answer is we need to reduce. I appreciate that. And then this may be to Director Burke, maybe better able to answer this question. Do you need anything else from the BPU? As far as we're going to make a recommendation of the BPU for the 20% voluntary reduction, the BPU will make that recommendation to the City Council. And the questions about the Water Advisory Committee of the Sonoma Water can recommend or actually affect changes in allocations based on unanimous vote of the Water Allocation, the Water Advisory Committee. And then if that in turn leads to liquidated damages, do the respective governing bodies that charge water rates to customers, do we need to take formal action on those Water Advisory Committee allocation changes?
So good questions, Board Member Walsh. In terms of the restructured agreement and section 3.5 that governs the ability to give allocations, that resides with either Sonoma Water or the Water Advisory Committee, the WAC. So the WAC did take that action on Monday. And so what we have agreed to unanimously is a different way to temporarily allocate water this summer for the months of July through October. As Deputy Director Martin mentioned, it's based on looking at a 20% reduction in diversions compared to 2020, and then doing an across the board equal cutback to all of the contractors. So that is what the WAC approved on Monday. And what the discussions we've had with Sonoma Water is that they're looking at it as that 4-month period. And only once that 4-month period is completed, if we haven't met our reduction, then looking at liquidated damages. There is ability under the contract to transfer water among contractors. So we're looking at that opportunity. The whole intent and goal is for all of us to work together and work on this allocation so that no one is actually charged liquidated damages. In answer to your question about anything additionally needed from the BPU at this time, no. What we will be doing is bringing this recommendation, if the subcommittee so chooses to make it, to the board, and then asking the board to make a recommendation to council, and we'll be going in front of council on the 18th of this month. And then, as Deputy Director Martin alluded to earlier, once we know what the action is from the State Water Board and what the corresponding reduction in diversions would be, then we will get an allocation based on what was approved for a straight percentage cutback. And then we will bring to both the BPU and the council our recommendation for the appropriate shortage stage we should implement. So we'll be back in front of the board, hopefully in June, but latest would be early July, and then going to the council also in July to implement that stage of our shortage plan.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And then I would note that the 4-month period is average is more permissive than the month-to-month then regardless.
It will give us some flexibility. And so we will still have monthly information, and we have had a lot of discussions internally about how we're going to track that information. And we'll be updating the board on this at every BPU meeting. So you'll be getting an update at every board meeting between now and the end of the year at this point, unless something drastically changes with rainfall. But Deputy Director Martin knows that he's on track, or if he's not here for some reason, his staff is on track to be at every BPU meeting reporting out on where we are with our, in response to our request for conservation, where we are for our demand side, where we are on the supply side in terms of purchases from Sonoma Water. So you'll be getting that information. We're finishing up the metrics and how we're going to present that. So you'll start seeing that for sure in July, if not sooner.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the education and your patience with the new member. And I'm very impressed by the measurement and the responsiveness. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Walsh. You came in at a busy year for this subcommittee. So we will get used to seeing a deputy director at every board meeting moving forward. But
and thank you for your help, Chair Watts. I really appreciate it, and your patience as well.
We learn every meeting, I think. So,
Yes.
Board Member Grable, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you for the presentation. It was daunting and really comprehensive and well done. So thank you.
Thank you. My only two questions on slide 8, you talked about the State Water Board making, any type to grant the request that Sonoma Water has presented. Is it typical that they do approve those requests? I know you said that they will then put on different, basically requests back to us, but is it typical that they do approve those? Or is that, I don't remember us doing that in the last couple of years that I've been on this subcommittee. So I'm just wondering what the typical response from the water board is.
As far as the history goes, can I defer it to you, Director Burke? Yeah, just as far as how those have gone in the past.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, the State Water Board does typically approve the temporary urgency change petitions with an order, but they typically put a lot of requirements on us as orders. So the last time we actually had an order from the State Water Board related to a drought or low water storage conditions was in 2009. Prior to that was in 2007. You may recall between 2014 and 2016, we were in a drought, and but that actually was action that was taken at the State Water Board that gave individual allocations to every retailer. So the governor didn't declare a statewide drought at this point. It's only in Sonoma and Mendocino counties. And so we are working closely with Sonoma Water. They need to take action to reduce the flows in the Russian River to help preserve storage. So in 09 and 07, the State Water Board absolutely approved it, but required reductions and diversions. And so what we're trying to do is be proactive and really show all the efforts and work we've done to date to get the education out to our community, and then suggesting the best way that we can help support that reduced flow in the rivers is to also suggest a 20% reduction in diversions from the Russian River. So that's what's being put forward. I would say that it's not only likely that they'll approve that, but they may also have additional conditions. They may also require more of a reduction in diversions than what we're putting forward.
Great. Well, it's great that we're anticipating those orders and trying to get ahead of them. But and then my last question was, I know that in the past we've had different grant opportunities to support water conservation efforts around toilet replacements or other type of appliance and so forth. And I know we did apply for increase for the Cash for Grass program that we saw this last board meeting, I believe. Is there any other opportunities that maybe not just our agency is looking at, but the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership or other types of programs that we can help with our efforts that we do internally in our department.
Yeah, we did hear that in the governor's proclamation that he was anticipating trying to do a May budget revise. We haven't seen anything concrete on that, but the idea was that there would be financial assistance to those that need it for drought. So we're definitely going to continue to track that. But yeah, definitely seeking opportunities. The Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership has been very successful in securing, grants through various propositions that have come up over time. But yeah, I think that as those funding opportunities perhaps come available, that sometimes they do when droughts come about, we'll definitely be seeking out that as much as possible. And, to definitely, those are the opportunities there to make conservation programs more enticing. We're limited, obviously, as an agency to trying to make them cost effective in a way that the implementation of a water conservation program is less than the purchase of more water. So that's kind of typically where we bump into that cap. But when those grants come in line, you can really increase those incentives above and beyond that kind of threshold that you keep yourself to.
Thank you. I know that, this department has done such a great job of trying to present as many educational and incentives to our community. So any more that anyone else can do is always appreciated for our ratepayers. So with that, are there any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to note too that we have seen an uptick in people requesting rebates and cash for grass all of a sudden and pre-approvals. So even now without those additional incentives, we're seeing interest, and so I think our outreach is working. So just some success there as well. And then just wanted to note Board Member Walsh's comments. We all get an education on this every time there's a drought that comes in, so every few years. So don't feel like you're the only one that's learning here as well. So
very true. Thank you. So with that, I will open it up for public comment on this item. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Secretary Atha, do we have any live or email or voicemail public comments?
We have no public comments.
Great. So I would like to open up for a motion for a recommendation on the voluntary 20% reduction.
Chair Watts, I would like to move that the Water Conservation Subcommittee, the Board of Public Utilities, recommend to the Board of Public Utilities that Santa Rosa Water implements a voluntary 20% reduction in water use program as proposed by Director Burke and Santa Rosa Water.
I second that.
I realize we actually did not need a formal recommendation. However, we will take it anyway.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry
You want
about
to see if I
that.
could read?
Well, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So some semi-formal recommendation. Okay, great. Well, we will then bring this to the full BPU. Thank you very much for all of your work and presentation. And with that, we will adjourn.
Thank you, Chair Watts and members Graybill and Director and Deputy Directors. This is new to me, so here we go.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye.